Welcome to CanCham HK and HKCBA's 8th annual Transpacific Entrepreneurial Virtual Conference. This is session 6, a fireside chat with David Armitage, founder and CEO of Velocity Solutions Group and governor of the Canadian Chamber of HK. My name is Cheung, and I'm the head of business development at Alea Insurance and moderating today's session. So during the session, if you have questions that you'd like to submit, or you can even comment, use the chat box at the bottom, and we will do our best to answer all of your questions during the session or after the conference. So David, welcome. It's such a pleasure to welcome you and host this chat with you as a fellow literature enthusiast and of course a Canadian. I'd really like to start by just hearing about your journey. You know, what was it that brought you to Hong Kong? How did you end up here?
Okay, kind of mid-career. My wife and I were having good careers back in Canada. I was with Shell, she was with Scotiabank, but we were traveling whenever we could to Asia. We had a honeymoon in Japan. We came back whenever we had enough money saved up and enough time, holidays came up, enough holidays saved up, we'd come to Asia. Just loved it. And it was our second trip out here, sitting in a pub in Stanley, having a beer, kind of looked around and went, yeah, we could live out here. And we made the conscious decision to try and focus our careers in that direction. It took a little bit longer than we probably anticipated at the time, because things were going well. We got transferred to, we were living in Calgary, great city, loved it. And then transfers back to Vancouver, great city, loved it. But we were trying to get one of our employers to ship us to Asia. And to make a long story short, Yolanda got offered to Hong Kong by Scotiabank. And it took me a nanosecond to say, take the job and we'll figure out how to get out there. Sold our house in Vancouver and moved to Hong Kong. Yolanda's been with the bank for 34 years, up until a few years ago, where she retired. And she's still out here taking photographs when she can, traveling around the world. And I set up this business.
Awesome. Wow. I love that, you know, it was a simple like trip and then a beer in Stanley that had you go, you know what, we got to get here and we're just going to make it happen. And when was that, like around, and how long have you been in Hong Kong now?
Well, the trips were 86 to Japan and then 88 to my first trip to Hong Kong. And we made the call in 95, moved out in 1995. So we were here just before the handover. And it was a lifestyle choice, without a doubt. We were having good careers, but probably for Yolanda and I, a little boring. We're pretty adventurous. Our travel, especially at that time, was backpacking and going to Cambodia and Myanmar and Indonesia, traveling as much as we could in the region. And it just seemed to be more exciting. Plus, a great deal of my career, especially near the end, was I was doing more and more study on Asia while I was in Canada. I took my MBA on international studies, focused on Asia, which was not easy at the time. It was trying to tell people in the rest of the country that, look over here, there's something really interesting going on over here. And it was looking at the economics, it was looking at the dynamics, it was looking at the travel, and a pretty exciting part of the world.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, you know, that lifestyle has really carried through all of these years, and you've seen so many changes in Hong Kong too. And it's, so I think what I really want to know is, like, when you got here, obviously it was with your wife's job, and, you know, what was it that was like a pivotal moment for you where you decided, like, you know, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, or I'm going to set up this business? You know, what's that journey been like for you?
Okay. Well, I've always been somewhat entrepreneurial. The first business I set up was when I was 14 years old in North Vancouver, a printing business. I always kind of like make money, but I also like to be around people. So when I got out here, there were, I probably spent about 6 months looking around for jobs. How could I fit in? I had viewed with a bunch of the big companies and a few of the small companies, but I did have Chinese language skills, and I did have a lot of experience in market entry and bringing IT into businesses. It's kind of what I was doing with Shell. I was either running markets or I was bringing in new systems to make the business run better. And at the end of 6 months, I had 6 opportunity offers. And what I was working on, I told you about the story, and said I can tell the story. So I went to Alea and said, listen, there's no jobs here, and you've got a good job. I'll hit the gym, get buff, and I'll be your slave. And she said, get a job. Find something to do. So I took 2 of those opportunities and I set up a marketing entry business. And one of them was bringing a Canadian software to the region. Actually, both of them were Canadian softwares. One was an internet startup and one was an established CRM. And out of that, I ended up finding another Canadian who was doing a IT services business around ERP. We joined together to make the first company, and then pick a disaster. It was up and down and up and down. It was just Asian financial crisis. And to make a long story short, then the last crisis that didn't kill the business, but wounded enough that we had to make some changes was 9/11. When the planes hit the building, all the contracts we had in our pipeline closed, like nothing. We didn't close the business. They got taken off the table. And I ended up buying out all the partners we had and the investors we had at the time. And I had this little rump of a business that did IT services. And I'm still running. I'm not running. I've got other people running it, but that was the rump of the business that we grew up on and brought in new partners that brought something else to the table. And then in 2010, we shifted to spinning companies out. That's when we formed Velocity Solutions Group. And we set up an analytics company, and we set up a securities company. We set up a mobility platform, and trying all sorts of different things, looking at what was going on in the world at the time and what people would need. And I mean, that's been so I call myself, when I write my great novel about me, it'll be the accidental entrepreneur. So I sort of fell into it, I guess, to make the long story short.
No, that's a great story. I mean, I'm kind of like, I wonder what I would say if my husband turned around one day and said, why don't I just get buff and you go and make the money? I might quite like it. But through your journey, and it has been like quite a long journey, as you shared, like you've seen a lot of like the crises and the changes, and obviously economic and world issues that have impacted your business. Like it sounds like you've had a lot of ups and downs. And as an entrepreneur, I think one of the most interesting things is to hear about people's failures, because that usually paves the way for you to expand and grow and look at what you could have done differently. So as you look back on your different ventures to get to where you are today, how would you share with other entrepreneurs, right? What would your advice be around knowing when to call it quits?
Well, first, just to step back, I think to if you're going to look at setting up a business, there's a couple of different strategies. Either you have a passion for something and you're really good at something, and then you chase that. As Jack Ma says, when you're trying to catch a rabbit, there's 9 rabbits in the field, just focus on one rabbit. I'm not a one rabbit guy. I don't work that way. I get bored. It's to know yourself a little bit more. I like money, I like people, and I get bored really easily. So I've got a lot of rabbits out there, and that's kind of been my business, my approach, my strategy to business. And the hope was that 1 or 2 or 3 would hit. And when we were preparing for this, I was just started making a list of all my failures. I got lots of them, lots and lots of failures. If there's been a flaw in my business process, I've not been as hard-nosed as I should have been, and not closed off opportunities when I saw that they just weren't working. And it was primarily, if I think about it, because there was someone attached to that, a person that I liked, that I enjoyed working with. The best part about being an entrepreneur is you get to choose who you work with. And for the most part, you get to choose your customers. And in the services industry, it's a good day when you fire a bad customer. It's a really good day when you fire a bad customer. And focus on those people that get what you're offering. And the offering for me, when you're starting out a business, a lot of people don't think about it this way. There's a couple of broader strategies. The biggest strategy in this part of the world has been to establish a relationship with the government, get a concession, and then extract rents from that concession. That's been very successful. Li Kai-shek, just got the whole list of people. Their expertise is in doing the deal and protecting what they've got and growing it that way. Or you can, like I say, get really good at something and focus on it, and go for a growth model, which we're seeing in a lot of unicorns. So that's a change in the way that business works out here, and it's a successful model. The other one, and it's my model, and it's simpler, is you got to make money. You've got to. I tell people to come to me, say, if you're going to start your own business, find something that someone will pay you some money for. There's your first customer. Now do it again, and then do it again, and then you've got something to adjust. As long as you've got cash coming in, you've got something real. You may not be getting enough for it. You might be getting too much for it. There's things to improve, but money coming in drives a business, not necessarily the strategy. And then it's making sure that you got the right people. And there's lots of good people in Hong Kong. That's been probably one of the best parts here. Finding people that are interested in engaging has not been difficult. Choosing from them takes a little bit more skill.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've kind of, well, yeah, maybe a little bit of luck, but I also hear that, that's one of your skills, is how to read people. While it may not have been, so good for you in the beginning, it's definitely sounding like it's worked out for you now. And with your business, you did start with lots of different things that kind of brought you to where you are now with 3 specific offerings. Would you say you've now shifted your business to more of that growth model, or are you still, keeping yourself entertained and like looking for other opportunities?
No, this is we're definitely into, since 2010, we've been in a more serious business mode. Not as serious as some businesses. We still probably kept some people on too long, and been a good place to work. I like to consider myself a pleasant employer. The only time I ever yell in the office is when I'm talking to the banks. Everyone I know was doing it yesterday. You want it, you got it. I don't have to yell at my staff. There's ways of expressing displeasure without being unpleasant. So, but what we're doing now is moving in a direction where we're focusing on 3 key businesses. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more of that later, but the businesses have all been becoming more mature, something we call operational maturity level, where you're trying to actually focus, in this case for me, because I'm getting older and I'm not going to do this forever, how do you get the management level in this town, in this region, to start acting like the management level in bigger corporations, or what I'm more used to back in North America, where management and middle management does make decisions. And that's not easy in this town. There's a lot of people who are happy to let the boss always make all the calls. So we're based on that. And yeah, so it's ongoing, but it's much more commercial. It's definitely much more commercial.
Wow. Yeah, and I think if you only have to yell at the bank, which I think it's everybody in Hong Kong, unless you work at the bank, that's not a bad problem to have, when you have a really strong team around you. And, I want to just reiterate what you shared earlier, that if you're a business and, you're an entrepreneur, making money is going to be your number 1 priority, and I really appreciate that. Like, it's not simple. It's almost like it's a basic, when it comes to starting a business. So I guess where this kind of leads me into is, where is the future of your company is really, it sounds like, empowering like the management that you have to kind of step in and have ownership on the different parts of the company. And then for yourself, what do you see for yourself in the future? Okay. Like, will you go back to Canada? Like, will you look to stay in Asia?
All good questions. So we just sold one of our businesses. We sold the analytics business. It got to a size and scale that the big guys were interested in it. We sold it to the Singtel subsidiary that does IT services. So that was an objective for that business. We'll be running it. My partner who's in charge of that business will be running it for a couple more years as he does his earn out, and then figuring out where he wants to retire. And I'm not too sure. We'll be talking about that. He's got some ideas. The other two businesses that I'm focusing on, we're in the middle of an exercise of mergers and acquisitions. I'm out trying to acquire smaller companies in the region and in Hong Kong that do managed services. And I'll close one this week. I've got a small one. I closed one originally when I brought in my current partner, Stuart Sanders, who's an Uber engineer and a securities guy now. He's moved his career more towards the security side. And we do work in the financial space. We maintain the infrastructure for asset managers and fund managers. So it's a very specific skill set. So that business is becoming more and more focused on the kinds of skills it takes to run an infrastructure for a licensed financial organization. And but as part of that, it's very much the lack of resources globally in the IT field is being felt all over the place. I mean, everyone's talking about the great, what is it called, the great resignation, and it's hard to find people, but it's been that way in IT for a while, and it's getting tighter. There are so many unfilled spaces in the IT world. So we set up a resourcing business in 2000, was one of the businesses we set up in 2006 out of the Philippines. And we've got a solid group of engineers and developers that we've been putting out to clients. I'm going to be focusing more on that once we get the managed service business up to a certain level. And then, I mean, one of the companies we're taking a look at buying, another small company in Vancouver, and they do managed services and they could do resourcing. The skills in this part of the world can be done remotely, can be sourced or worked on remotely for applications back in North America. And there's a lot of people that want to move to North America. And I've got one of my first hires in the Philippines is halfway to Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
He's our vice president of the Philippines, already has his wife there, and he's going to be moving with his kids probably within a month or two. And it's one of the reasons why we're taking a look at Vancouver now, so we can keep him interested in going. Plus, there's opportunities.
Yeah, you have got the opportunities. You are looking at everywhere. Like, as much as you're focused in Hong Kong and Asia, like I really hear you also looking globally, like back into North America. You know, and I think I saw one of the questions pop up in the chat box here, which was, you know, what your ties were with Canada, given you've been in Hong Kong for so long. Yeah.
Well, the first contracts, like I said earlier, were with the Canadian companies, both out of Vancouver, the software companies. And I've always looked to Canada first for software solutions that I'll sell on to my clients or like fit into our platform. So Global Relay, another great Vancouver company, does archives for HSBC and SocGen and several others. Private company, not a lot of people know about, a company called Eastern Tire out of the East Coast, does managed detection and response in the security space. Pivotal was the CRM, and BlackBerry. This goes back a little ways, but I was the first BlackBerry reseller in Asia, good Canadian technology. IBM and I got the contract at the same time, so I always say I was the first because A comes before I. But so Canada has always been a source for solutions. We have good engineering, we have good solutions, so that's a fit. And now I'm looking for opportunities to help Canadian companies. We're pitching a college right now that needs IT services and has lost some of their people because there's other opportunities around it. We're pitching to them to take over their IT, like we run the IT for the finance companies here.
So what would your, so it's because you've got this kind of hands in both continents, I want to say, maybe even more. Like, what would your advice be, or what would your key takeaways be for anyone who's looking at doing business, either they're in Canada and they want to look to invest in Hong Kong specifically, or even in the region, or the other way around?
Sure.
Like, where are the opportunities that you're seeing?
I'm not the best to talk to about opportunities back in Canada. I just found this little one, and there are other people that can talk to that. But coming out here, that's what I've done most of the last 30 years. So I can talk about that, I think, with a fair amount of solid understanding of what's going on. I'd raise 2 points. There's a lot of talk back in Canada, the separation of China, what's all going on in Hong Kong. This too shall pass. This is not going to continue forever. China is going to be the biggest, if not one of the biggest, economies in the world. And Hong Kong very, very much has a place in China, and that's as an entrepot to the rest of the world. And if you're listening and you disagree, or you're watching too much Western media, all I can say is it ain't going away. The best metaphor I can use to try to describe Hong Kong in particular, never mind the region, but Hong Kong in particular, to people back in North America, is think of it this way. In the largest economy in the world in 20 years, here's a city that has the corporate structure of Delaware, the money of New York, and the weather of Miami. Everybody wants to live here. And so that's not going to change. We've got some problems now we've got to get over, without a doubt. And business is not happy with what's been going on this last little while. But Hong Kong has made so many life-changing moments in the last 70 years, never mind the last 30. And right now, it is the center of finance for China coming out to the rest of the world. And it's also very, very well located if you're interested in ASEAN. It's between Singapore and Hong Kong. And frankly, if you've got a big enough organization, I think you should have both. I have both. I've got a small business in Singapore now that I'm going to be spending more time on, and a bigger business in Hong Kong. But I've got, I think I added 3 new clients in Singapore in the finance space just in this last year. So but there's this ASEAN region that's the fastest growing region in the world last 10 years, more than China, faster than China. Great opportunities, complicated, but fascinating. It's Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and then Singapore and Philippines and Hong Kong. This is just a wonderful puzzle to try to figure out, with some great people, outstanding scuba diving, really good golf, lovely weather,
delicious food, great opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm a walking
perfect.
tourist board.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly be, in for it. I mean, I am in it. I'm also an entrepreneur, and I also work in like a financial services company. And this leads perfectly into this other question I can see in the chat boxes. Do you have plans to leave like many of the other expats recently? And I think it would be safe to say the answer is no.
Well, actually, it's half right. My career has reached a point now where, because of the technology and the services we deliver, I can work anywhere in the world. That's what we do. We were offering this service 10 years ago to allow clients to work remotely in a secure environment. So I can work securely and remotely anywhere in the world. And my interest is global. So Hong Kong is going to stay the base for the business. But if I was to draw a picture of my perfect world in the next 5 years, I'll be spending an awful lot more time on Salt Spring Island in my cabin. And that would be between the months of June through September, if I can. We've been going back every summer, mostly just for 3 weeks to a month. But if I could extend that, because I got some more business going on in North America, I would do that. But I want to spend more time in Japan, just because I'm personally interested in it. I'm not sure if there's as many opportunities, but it certainly is a great place and we love traveling there. I will be spending more time in the Philippines. We're working on Vietnam now, trying to, just before COVID hit, it was in our strategy to do more work in Vietnam. We were looking to fill some resources to get going. And I need to spend some more time in Singapore. I need to get on my horse and ride. So
Yeah.
I would like to be doing a bit more riding, but I don't see Hong Kong not being a part of this if I can make it all fit together. I wouldn't be the first one that wanted to and couldn't. There's a lot of guys that end up moving back to Vancouver and sort of it all fades away when you're that side of the Pacific, but
Sure.
I don't think it's going to fade away for me.
Sure, it definitely doesn't sound like it, like especially like given your love for the region and how much you see opportunities and especially where your business are taking you to. But also Salt Spring Island doesn't sound bad either. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights today, David. I look forward to Asia's growth from our conversation. I think it sounds very promising. And I also want to take an opportunity to thank all of our attendees for participating today. I appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with David or myself, feel free to find us through LinkedIn. And hopefully we'll see you around at some of the networking sessions throughout the next 2 days.
Thank you, Dee.